In just 11 minutes, Donald Trump turned a congressional hearing into a circus and dared Jasmine Crockett to beat him in an IQ test, sneering, "I'll resign if you win." Cameras flashed, Republicans laughed, and millions tuned in for the show. But while America was watching numbers, Jasmine found a secret executive order that could erase 43,000 immigrant families overnight. What if the smartest person in the room wasn't the one taking the test, but the one exposing it? The oversight chamber didn't hum. It waited. Like a theater seconds before curtain, like a church just before someone confesses something no one's ready to hear. The walls gleamed with polished wood and pressure. Cameras hung like vultures, silent, blinking, feeding the nation. And at the center of it all sat Donald Trump, legs wide, tie perfect, that same smug grin stretched across his face like a dare dipped in gold. He leaned forward, voice thick with performance. "Let's make it simple," he said, dragging the moment like a match over gasoline. "IQ test. You win, I resign." Boom. That was it. The fuse was lit. Gasps weren't loud, they were sharp, like someone popping every balloon in the room at once. Phones flew out of pockets. Twitter ignited like a slot machine hitting 777s. Even some Democrats couldn't help but glance up. A few MAGA reps started chuckling like they'd just watched a school bully push a kid down the stairs. But Jasmine Crockett didn't blink, didn't twitch, didn't even breathe differently. She sat as still as a storm before thunder. The kind of quiet that isn't weakness, it's calculation. Right then, AOC leaned in low and fast. "Don't fall for it. It's bait." Her voice was tight, alarmed, but Jasmine's eyes never left Trump. Her reply didn't rise, it sank like a blade. "Oh, I won't, but I'll use it." And just like that, while the world thought they were about to watch a contest of brains, Jasmine had already figured out it wasn't about IQ. It was about distraction. And someone, somewhere, was getting erased in silence. Back in her office, the cameras off but her instincts screaming, Jasmine sat stiff as concrete while Malik, her chief aide, burst in with eyes wide and a tablet shaking in his hands. "You need to see this," he said, breath short. On screen, an internal scheduling memo from the committee chair's office dated 3 days before the hearing. The so-called neutral IQ test already approved, and the psychologist pre-selected. Former military contractor, MAGA donor, quietly flagged in a 2022 ethics probe. It wasn't just a challenge, it was choreography. Jasmine's jaw didn't move, but her fingers tapped once, twice against the armrest. Malik scrolled. The psychologist's name had been cleared through back channels and approved by staffers with ties to Trump's 2028 exploratory team. One of them flagged in internal records as personally vetted by J.D. Vance. Jasmine narrowed her eyes. "They didn't just set the rules," she murmured. "They built the scoreboard." And Vance helped install the lights. On her second monitor, the hashtag IQ Showdown was climbing faster than wildfire in July. Fox, CNN, even late-night comedians were already running graphics. Crockett versus Trump battle of brains. Too clean, too perfect, too loud. She sat back slowly. Her mind spiraled through memories like trapdoors. Trump baiting the press with an affair just to hide a shady Ukraine wire transfer. The time he shouted witch hunt while 2 whistleblowers vanished from federal payroll. Spectacle wasn't his defense, it was his camouflage. "No one gives up power," she muttered, "unless they're hiding something worse." And this time the stakes weren't his ego. They were legal, federal, violent. Jasmine didn't know what the real game was yet, but she knew one thing for sure. It wasn't about IQ. It was about who Trump was trying to make disappear while the world watched the show. At 12:41 a.m., Jasmine slipped through the East Rotunda door heels, echoing like warning shots in the quiet. Senator Raphael Warnock was already waiting. Tie loosened sleeves, rolled eyes dark with something unsaid. No aides, no pleasantries, just a single page folded twice and slid across the table. "They slipped this through during the chaos," he muttered. "And no one's watching." She opened it. The heading was clean but lethal. Emergency Citizenship Reevaluation Act. No floor vote, no media coverage. A signature from DHS timestamped 11 minutes after Trump's IQ declaration. It reclassified naturalized citizenships as pending under urgent national security reassessment. Jasmine stared at it like it had just hissed. Back at her office, Malik didn't sit. He hovered behind three glowing monitors scrolling DHS activity logs. They uploaded it while Fox was airing the IQ graphic, he said. Nobody blinked. Jasmine's eyes narrowed as line items appeared. ICE mobilizations, new file pulls, flagged immigration records. This isn't just paperwork, she whispered. It's a fuse. Malik's voice dropped. They're prepping sweeps, quiet ones. No press. Just gone. His hands trembled slightly as he clicked into encrypted channels. Jasmine stood still the way a soldier listens for landmines. This IQ stunt, Malik said, is smoke. Jasmine looked up at the red camera light blinking in the corner, still live from earlier. It blinked once, then again. She walked toward it, slowly stopped inches away, and stared dead into the lens. What kind of man distracts a nation just to erase people quietly? And in that flicker, she wasn't asking the country. She was warning it. The next morning, Jasmine sat in her war room, half lit, half awake, but fully locked in. The document lay on the center screen like a corpse on an autopsy table. Her legal team surrounded it, eyes squinting through red lines and footnotes like surgeons searching for hidden tumors. At the top, the phrase pulsed like a heartbeat, expedited status reassessment for naturalized individuals. Harmless at first glance, but under legal scrutiny, it bled with intent. No criteria, no court oversight, just vague language dressed in bureaucracy. Malik hovered beside her, jaw, clenched fingers, moving like he was defusing a bomb. It doesn't define who gets reassessed, he muttered, which means it could be anyone. Jasmine didn't speak. She just watched as the layers peeled away. Words like accelerated discretionary, preemptive risk analysis. All the vocabulary of a system sharpening its teeth. Then came the punch to the gut. Malik matched the signature timestamp. The directive had been filed to the minute as Trump announced the IQ stunt. Jasmine leaned back, eyes locked on the ceiling like she could see through it. He didn't just create a distraction, Malik said, voice steady but tight. He synchronized it. He choreographed national attention down to the second. Jasmine tapped the memo twice, slow and deliberate. It's not policy, she whispered. It's cover. And suddenly the room felt colder. Not just because of what they'd found, but because of how long it had been working while no one was looking. And now she was the only one staring straight into it. The next morning, Jasmine sat in her war room, half lit, half awake, but fully locked in. The document lay on the center screen like a corpse on an autopsy table. Her legal team surrounded it, eyes squinting through red lines and footnotes like surgeons searching for hidden tumors. At the top, the phrase pulsed like a heartbeat, expedited status reassessment for naturalized individuals. Harmless at first glance. But under legal scrutiny, it bled with intent. No criteria, no court oversight, just vague language dressed in bureaucracy. Malik hovered beside her, jaw clenched fingers, moving like he was defusing a bomb. It doesn't define who gets reassessed, he muttered, which means it could be anyone. Jasmine didn't speak. She just watched as the layers peeled away. Words like accelerated discretionary preemptive risk analysis. All the vocabulary of a system sharpening its teeth. Then came the punch to the gut. Malik matched the signature timestamp. The directive had been filed to the minute as Trump announced the IQ stunt. Jasmine leaned back, eyes locked on the ceiling like she could see through it. He didn't just create a distraction, Malik said, voice steady but tight. He synchronized it. He choreographed national attention down to the second. Jasmine tapped the memo twice, slow and deliberate. It's not policy, she whispered. It's cover. And suddenly the room felt colder, not just because of what they'd found, but because of how long it had been working while no one was looking. And now she was the only one staring straight into it. That night, Jasmine didn't sleep. She paced. She circled her war room like a general studying a battlefield drawn in headlines and hush money. The IQ test was never the objective, it was bait. But now she would turn it into a blade. We're not just answering questions, she told her team. We're asking better ones. On live TV. Malik and two aides got to work slicing through DHS archives like surgeons. One tracked ICE movements. Another compiled testimonies from families flagged within 48 hours of the directive. Leaks trickled in muffled DHS briefings audio clips, ending in phrases like preemptive containment and discretionary reassignment. Jasmine didn't flinch. She fed off it. This wasn't about a score anymore. It was about exposure. At 3:12 a.m., alone in her office, Jasmine opened the top drawer of her desk. Inside, folded into a yellowing envelope, was a letter her grandfather wrote from a Selma holding cell in 1965. She read it like scripture. "You will fight ghosts wrapped in gold. They'll smile when they stab you. So keep walking even when the cameras stop." Her hand trembled as she folded it again, but her spine stayed still. She looked up at the Capitol dome outside her window, lit like a stage that had forgotten its own script. Malik entered behind her. "We got audio," he said. "It's dirty." She nodded once. No ceremony, no fear, just precision. "They never hit you head-on, Jasmine," her grandfather's voice echoed in her mind. "They smile and move the goalpost." And now she was done playing by their rules. The morning of the televised IQ test arrived like a storm that had RSVP'd. Cameras lined the Capitol chamber like crosshairs. News banners flashed IQ Showdown Crockett vs. Trump in bold red type, and anchors smiled like they were selling tickets to a blood sport. Jasmine walked in without theatrics, no entourage, no swagger, just a black folder in one hand and something sharper in the other, certainty. Behind the curtains, J.D. Vance watched with arms folded, murmuring into his earpiece, "She takes the bait or she breaks." He wasn't just betting against her. He was part of the rig. At the front stood Dr. Clarence Briggs, dressed in a gray suit that screamed neutrality, chin-high clipboard ready. The moderator, the nonpartisan psychologist chosen to oversee the test. But Jasmine already knew the truth, and when her mic clicked on, she made sure America would too. "Before we begin," she said calmly, eyes never leaving Briggs, "I'd like to thank Dr. Briggs for flying in from Connecticut, where he recently closed his consultancy with the Trump 2020 data team." The room didn't gasp, it tilted. Briggs shifted but said nothing. Trump chuckled under his breath. A few Republicans exchanged glances like kids caught stealing answers during a quiz. Jasmine continued, tone steady, surgical. This test was never neutral. It was picked, like a jury, like a side. She placed the folder gently on the table, but it thudded like a gavel. Inside, campaign invoices, screenshots, a signature. Briggs's. Trump leaned back, smirk widening, but his eyes blinked faster now. Jasmine caught it. So did the nation. And somewhere between her words and his silence, the test stopped being a game and started becoming a trial. While the nation focused on cameras and questions, Malik was in the basement server room, face lit by screen glow, jaw locked like a man trying to break a code before it detonated. He wasn't looking for errors. He was looking for fingerprints. And just after 2:13 p.m., he found them. Buried inside the test software's diagnostic log was a line of code labeled Tiered Calibration, Preset Alpha. It adjusted difficulty mid-test, but only for one participant, Jasmine Crockett. 2 clicks deeper, and it unraveled, fast-tracking back to a private Dropbox folder titled Optics and Outcome IQ Control. Dozens of emails between Briggs and a shadow team of campaign strategists. Subject lines that weren't subtle: make it close, but not too close. Jasmine must not win outright. Outcome must reflect narrative control. Malik's breath hitched. This wasn't a test. It was a broadcast stunt built like rigged theater. Upstairs, Jasmine stood still at her podium earpiece, silent but heart-pounding. Malik's text came through in one line. "It's wired. You were never supposed to win." She glanced once at the screen, just enough. Then she looked at Trump, who was now basking in the attention, soaking in applause he hadn't earned. "They built a win," she whispered to herself, her voice too low for the mic. Not a test. Her fingers curled around the edge of the podium, like a fighter feeling the bell. She wasn't here to win anymore. She was here to expose the fight was fake. The first question appeared on the monitor: abstract shapes, rotating patterns, pick the one that fits. Jasmine didn't even glance at the options. "This one," she said, pointing. "It matches the ice raid schedule in Miami last summer, Monday mornings, always in zip codes with high Afro-Caribbean populations." Not coincidence. Pattern. Briggs blinked, confused. "Ms. Crockett, please stick to the test." Jasmine didn't move. "I am." The next question flashed logic, grid-colored dots. She ignored the prompt. "Did you know the DHS directive uses color codes too? Red means targeted for reevaluation. Most of the reds are from El Salvador, Sudan, Haiti. You built your test on dots. I see people. Her voice was even, but her hands trembled slightly controlled fury dressed in poise. Briggs shifted uncomfortably. That's not the question. Jasmine turned to him, gaze unflinching. Then maybe it's the wrong test. The chamber rustled. Reporters leaned in. Trump narrowed his eyes like a man realizing the script was slipping from his hands. Jasmine continued. You wanted answers in numbers. I brought answers in lives. How many mothers deported before school pickup counts as a logic flaw? How many veterans flagged as suspicious before that counts as a data pattern? No one interrupted this time. She stared into the cameras, unblinking. Calm, ready. You asked me to prove my intelligence, she said, but I came to test yours. Because what if the smartest person in the room was the only one who refused to play dumb? It came in just after midnight, no caller ID, no name, just a voicemail dropped into Malik's encrypted line like a match tossed into gasoline. He played it once in the dark, then again with trembling fingers. The voice was unmistakable. Gravel thick, slow, and surgical. Trump. Get them out before the election. If they protest, we'll say they cheated on the citizenship test. Make it look objective. Nobody questions a number. The audio hissed, crackled, then ended. No timestamp, no location, just truth raw and smoking. Malik didn't speak. He just handed Jasmine the phone. She pressed play, and for 12 seconds the room stood still. Her breath slowed. Her eyes locked on nothing, like her body had frozen just to let her mind run free. Every suspicion she'd carried was suddenly lit in neon. This wasn't about distraction. It wasn't even about power. It was about erasure. Sanitized, efficient, data-wrapped erasure. She lowered the phone without a word. Then so quietly Malik almost missed it. She whispered, he's weaponizing IQ to rewrite who belongs here. No headlines. No debates. Just policy turned scalpel, cutting people out of existence with the stroke of a pen and the cover of a show. Outside the Capitol, lights flickered in the rain like a machine still running, unaware it was being used. Jasmine's jaw tightened. That audio wasn't just evidence, it was intent. And now the whole game had changed. Because now she didn't just know the trick. She had caught the hand pulling it. The Houston ICE facility looked more like a warehouse than a detention center. Gray, windowless, silent. Jasmine walked through its gates with her badge tucked low and fury burning high. The air inside was too cold, like the kind used to preserve things no one wants to see rot. A young officer nodded her through eyes avoiding hers. In a back room lined with plastic chairs and security glass, she found them 2 9-year-old twins' legs, swinging fingers locked together like shields. Their names were Mateo and Lucia. Their parents had been picked up 3 nights ago, flagged under the emergency reevaluation memo. No trial, no call, just vanished. Jasmine knelt to their eye level, forcing a calm into her voice that her hands refused to follow. Lucia didn't cry. Mateo did, but silently, the kind of crying that doesn't shake your body, it freezes it. My dad said something before they took him, Mateo said, voice like a thread. Jasmine leaned closer. What did he say? The boy stared past her like reading something on a wall only he could see. Tell them we're not numbers. Something cracked, not loud but deep. Jasmine stood slowly, hands curling into fists. These weren't families. To the system they were spreadsheets, targets, statistically managed disappearances. If I don't expose this now, she said through clenched teeth, it'll happen in silence. The guard behind her shifted awkwardly, like he'd just heard something he wasn't supposed to, but Jasmine didn't look back. She came here to remember their names before someone buried them under data. At exactly 8 p.m., every major network cut to a podium draped in navy, flanked by 2 flags, 1 microphone, and 3 faces that didn't blink. Jasmine Crockett stood center, AOC at her right, Senator Warnock at her left. No opening statement, no preamble, just a flash drive in her hand and fire in her eyes. This is the voice of policy, she said, and this is what it sounds like behind closed doors. She inserted the drive. The audio played. Trump's voice crisp and cruel. Get them out before the election. If they protest, say they cheated on the citizenship test. No one questions a number. The words fell like stones into a glass chamber. The press room froze. Journalists didn't write, they stared. The networks didn't cut to commercial. They leaned in. A producer in the control room whispered, "Is this real?" Someone else said, "That's his voice?" In a back hallway, Trump's legal team scrambled, shouting into phones, barking orders to shut down the stream. But the servers were federal. The feed was uninterruptible. Millions were already recording, clipping, uploading. The mask hadn't slipped, it had shattered. Jasmine didn't gloat. She didn't flinch. She just stepped back from the mic, eyes steady on the sea of cameras, now forced to confront what they couldn't unhear. She left the room without a word. But the question burned across every screen, every living room, every office across America. What happens when the mask slips? And the voice behind it is undeniable. By morning, the knives were out. Trump took to Truth Social like a man cornered, but still swinging, posting in all caps. Jasmine Crockett is a fraud, a liar, a dangerous hoax. Cable networks lit up with talking heads. The phrase fake audio bounced between pundits like a virus. Within hours, MAGA-aligned House reps filed a formal ethics complaint against her, accusing Jasmine of inciting public disorder and misuse of classified material. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. They were drowning in facts, so they called them fiction. Inside the Capitol, things turned colder. Her inbox flooded. Death threats, donor pullouts. Even some Democrats began to flinch. In a closed-door meeting, a senior party leader leaned in and said what cowards always say when truth becomes inconvenient. "You need to dial it down, Jasmine. You're becoming a distraction." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't blink. She just looked him dead in the eye. "They don't get to weaponize silence," she said, voice sharp as a blade, "and call it peace." Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the flags like warning shots. Jasmine stood alone on the Capitol steps later that evening, reporters shouting her name, cameras closing in like wolves. She didn't run, didn't dodge. She faced the storm with her spine straight and her eyes forward. The retaliation wasn't surprising. It was proof the truth had landed exactly where it hurt, and she had no intention of letting it go quiet. By noon, the Capitol was shaking, not from bombs, but from voices. Thousands gathered in the cold, wrapped in flags, hoodies and fury. Some held photos of missing loved ones. Others held signs scrawled in Sharpie IQ humanity, and she spoke. We heard. Chanting rose like thunder, raw and uneven, but unmistakably alive. Police formed lines. Helicopters hovered, but no one moved. They had come to stand with her. Inside her office, Jasmine sat surrounded by letters, stacks rising like barricades. Some were threats, venom sealed in envelopes, but most were hope. Messages from teachers, nurses, veterans, immigrants. A note from a third-grade class in Newark written in colored pencil. And one envelope weathered, handwritten and trembling with history. She opened it slowly. A black Wadawidhuduari veteran, 98 years old, had written, "I've seen this before. They said we weren't smart enough to vote, smart enough to lead, smart enough to matter. You congresswomen are the right voice at the right time. Don't sit down." The paper shook in her hands. For a moment she couldn't read. Her vision blurred, chest cracked. A single tear broke loose, public, unhidden. It was the first time the cameras caught her crying, and the only time she let them. She wiped her cheek, folded the letter, and stood. No speech, no applause. Just motion, deliberate, unstoppable. The crowd outside didn't see her yet, but they could feel it. The woman they came for was back on her feet. The invitation came wrapped in smugness and spotlight. Trump appeared on primetime cable, flanked by allies, lips curled into that practiced smirk. "Let's do it again," he said. Same IQ challenge. This time, neutral terms, neutral judges. Let's see if she's still brave when the rules are fair. Laughter followed like trained applause. The bait was shinier, the trap wider. Jasmine didn't flinch. She watched the clip from her office, arms crossed, jaw set like stone. Reporters swarmed her hallway within minutes, cameras begging for a response. She gave it cold, clear, and unshakable. "I'm done proving I belong. I passed the only test that matters. Now let's test truth. No dramatics, no spectacle. Just 5 words that cracked the entire narrative open." She strode into the Capitol that afternoon with one demand: a formal congressional investigation into the DHS directive, its origins, the ICE sweeps, and the attempt to manipulate public perception through a fake test. This wasn't a political stunt, she said into the chamber mic. It was policy dressed up as theater used to erase citizens behind a curtain of numbers. The chamber murmured. Some looked away, but others unexpectedly nodded. Even silence can shift when pressed against evidence. And as she stepped away from the mic, no longer the contestant, no longer the target, but the architect of a reckoning. One question lingered behind her like smoke over fire. What's smarter than passing their test, making them take yours? The halls of Congress don't sleep. They whisper. And that night, as most of the country rested under the illusion of order, Jasmine moved like a shadow with purpose. No cameras, no speeches, just closed doors, hushed voices, and a list of names she wasn't supposed to reach. In rooms scented with coffee and calculation, she laid it bare: the directive was illegal, immoral, and now undeniable. One by one, centrist Republicans and weary Democrats listened. Some didn't look her in the eye. Others nodded before she even finished. In one smoke-glassed office, J.D. Vance stood in her way, arms folded, smile thin as wire. "There won't be a vote," he said. "The order's legal. It's been processed. This circus is over." Jasmine didn't blink. She took a slow step forward, her voice a blade wrapped in velvet. "If you're proud of it, vote on it in the light." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. His silence was louder than any gavel. By 2:17 a.m., she had the signatures, a motion to rescind, a vote on the floor. They tried to bury it under bureaucracy, to smother it beneath red tape and fatigue. But Jasmine knew the truth about midnight in Washington. It's when the cowards sleep and the fighters get to work. The chamber was packed, but the tension made it feel hollow. The vote had been placed on the docket under emergency reconsideration, a label usually reserved for disasters, because that's what this was. Minutes before proceedings began, Trump's inner circle filed out like actors abandoning a stage before the final scene. No statements, just smirks and silence. They knew what was coming. They didn't want to watch it land. Jasmine remained. No notes, no teleprompter. Just a voice sharpened by every lie she'd outlived. She walked to the podium, spine-straight heels, echoing like a drumbeat of defiance. And then for 8 uninterrupted minutes, she spoke not like a politician, but like a witness. This was never about IQ, she said, eyes moving across the room. It was about identity, about rewriting the terms of belonging, about who gets to call this place home and who gets erased when no one's watching. Some seats shifted, some hands fidgeted, but no one looked away. She told them about Maria, about Mateo and Lucia, about the ICE officers who refused to answer questions, about the audio file they all tried to pretend didn't exist. Her voice never cracked. Her truth did the breaking for her. When she finished, she didn't ask for applause. She just returned to her seat as still as stone. And for a full 30 seconds, no one said a word, because when someone finally speaks the truth out loud, even the liars need time to breathe. The roll call began like a countdown to detonation. One by one, names echoed through the chamber, each followed by a red or blue flash on the digital board overhead. No cheers, no whispers, just the rhythmic thud of democracy holding its breath. Jasmine sat motionless, hands clasped, eyes locked on the screen, as if willing it to break free from cowardice. A single vote swung red, then another blue. It was closer than anyone had predicted. On the final name, the room went still. The board flickered. A pause, then passed. The directive was dead. The executive order rescinded by the very body that once ignored its shadow. Gasps rippled across the floor, followed by a roar from the gallery above. Immigrant families, students, veterans, children, rising to their feet like a tide that refused to stay silent. Some lawmakers clapped. Others stood frozen like the truth had knocked the wind out of them. Trump's seat, reserved and untouched, remained empty. His allies scattered. His power diminished not by scandal, but by exposure. Jasmine didn't rise. She just exhaled a breath that carried months of fire, fear, and fight. She didn't need to gloat. She didn't need to speak. Her silence for once was louder than any microphone. Because when truth walks in, even silence has to listen. The headlines came slower now. Trump had vanished. No cameras, no rallies, no midnight rants. Just silence. Not the victorious kind, but the kind that follows exposure like ash after fire. His seat in the chamber remained untouched, a ghost chair surrounded by a city that had finally stopped pretending. The storm had passed, but its damage had names. Jasmine returned to the room alone, early morning light cutting through the high windows like memory. No podium, no reporters, just echoes. She stepped to the center where it had all unfolded, where a man tried to weaponize doubt, and a woman turned it into proof. The floor felt different now, not cleaner, just heavier, like truth had stained it. Malik stood near the door, arms crossed, voice quiet. "You didn't just win," he said. "You rewrote the test." Jasmine didn't turn. She stared at the empty row where the opposition once sat. Her voice came soft but sharp. "I didn't come here to win. I came to remember who lost. Because behind every lie stood a name, and behind every law a family. She didn't carry trophies. She carried stories. And now she carried the burden of what had almost been erased. The room didn't need applause. It needed remembrance. And Jasmine Crockett had made sure history would never forget again. Maria's family walked out of the ICE facility just after dawn, blinking against the light-clutching hands like survivors pulled from wreckage. No cameras, no press. Just Jasmine waiting by the curb coat, wrapped-tight eyes already glassed with relief. Maria hugged her so hard it knocked the breath out of both of them. "They said we'd disappear," she whispered. "But you made them see us." Jasmine didn't reply. She didn't need to. The silence said everything. 2 days later, Mateo and Lucia stood at the gates of their new school backpacks, swinging their eyes wide with wonder and unfamiliar safety. Jasmine watched from a distance. For once, no speech, no spotlight. Just a nod to Malik and the quiet knowledge that something had been set right. That evening at a small brick church in D.C., the names of deported families were read aloud one by one like hymns with wounds. Jasmine stood in the back, head bowed, fingers clasped. Then as the final name echoed through the rafters, she stepped forward and took the last candle. Her voice didn't tremble. It burned. "They tried to erase them," she said, lifting the flame high, "but we remembered." And when she lit the last candle, it was not for mourning. It was for return, for dignity, for voices that would never go dark again. Because memory, when carried by the right hands, becomes resistance. The screen fades, and not to a podium, not to a courtroom, but to Jasmine standing alone in the chamber, bathed in quiet light. No applause, no motion, just her. The room behind her is empty, but the weight of what filled it still lingers in the air like smoke that refuses to clear. She doesn't move for a long moment. Then her voice breaks the silence, not loud, but impossible to ignore. "They said intelligence was a number," she says. She said it was knowing when to stand. "They said truth was optional." She said it was oxygen. Her eyes lock with the camera. No performance, no filter, just presence. "You watched what they tried to do," she continues. "You heard what they said when they thought no one was listening. So now I ask you, what will you do the next time someone tells you to prove you belong?" The camera slowly pulls back. Jasmine doesn't look away. She holds her stare, not demanding, but daring. Beyond her, the flag doesn't wave. It waits. Final words appear on screen as her voice fades, quiet as a pulse, but just as vital. Don't just watch. Remember. Speak. Share. When truth is twisted into tests and citizenship is reduced to cold administrative language, the most powerful act isn't winning, it's refusing to stay silent. Intelligence isn't about how many questions you get right. It's knowing when to stand and who to stand with when the world tries to forget them. If one day you're asked to prove you deserve to exist, will you stay silent or will you speak, leave a comment? Sometimes a single voice is all it takes to keep someone's name from being erased. If this story shook something in, you don't just scroll past. Like, share and subscribe to Hill Insights, where silence doesn't win and truth doesn't wait. Tap the bell, because next time it might be your name they try to erase. What moment made you pause? Made you feel? Made you remember? Tell us in the comments, because your voice doesn't just matter. It protects others. This dramatized story is inspired by real struggles and real people. All characters and dialogue are fictionalized for commentary and education. It is not intended to defame or mislead, but to inspire reflection and civic awareness. Thanks for watching. Truth isn't over. It's just waiting for someone to hear it.